Hello and welcome everyone to the main event this week. I'm Meeta, Sahni, and I'm really pleased to be joined by JoEllen Grzyb of the Impact Factory. Hi, JoEllen.
Hi, so lovely to be here again. I love our chats.
I do too. First Thursday of every month is JoEllen and I shooting the breeze on a different angle and a different approach to business challenges. JoEllen, your background and your business is all around communication and how people can learn how to be better communicators, but you and I are joint in agreeing that businesses and business relationships and employee success and all of that is built on communication and getting that right.
Communication and trust, and the two go together. I always say, and I'm sure I've said it here, that you want to be forgiven your mistakes because we all screw up at some point.
Yeah.
And that comes with open communication.
Yeah.
Well, building that trust, feeling that sense of loyalty means that when things do go wrong, it's not like, oh, they're out to get me, or, that it's accusatory. It's just, okay, what can we do? How can we fix it?
Yeah, absolutely. And the reason I've mentioned that is because today's topic is all around the fact that last Thursday was Freedom Day and all COVID restrictions have been lifted. And essentially the end of COVID, apparently, although JoEllen, you said that some of the numbers are ticking back up today.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone out there does the Zoe study, but I've been doing that for quite some time, and they have a little chart of all, and it was going down, and now it's just beginning to go, well, not just beginning, the last few days. And we'll see more in the next 2 weeks, obviously, with the restrictions having been lifted. Freedom Day is a bit of an odd cycle, given everything that's going on. But it is, I think that, what we talked about before coming on air was just being able to take a look at both sides of sides.
Well, we're taking responsibility, isn't it? Employers now need to take responsibility for setting structure and safety around their people. And we've got a poll that covers that. We'll come to that. But one of the things that JoEllen and I thought would be a sort of different way to address this is actually, let's look at the solutions and understand what's going on from an employer perspective, but also translate for what employees are looking for and vice versa, because success, as we said, is built and broken on communication and trust. And if we can get an understanding of where other people are coming from, walking in the other people's shoes, as we used to call it, hopefully we can help everyone get back to, and you don't like the word new normal. What do you call it?
I'm calling it the new abnormal.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when we're looking at, apparently just a few weeks ago, a third of people still hadn't returned to the office. I was in London yesterday. Obviously, the tube strikes aren't helping, but it, again, felt normal, abnormal, whatever. It just didn't feel like we'd had a pandemic at all. And when you look at the pain and the anguish and the stress and, the journeys people have been on, I think it's really important not to assume that when we're looking at how to get back to rhythm at the office.
Yeah, I think that it is about, I always think, don't look to replicate what was there before, because hoping that you can go back to what it looked like is actually going to prevent you from having those good conversations. And also don't sweep it under the carpet and just la, 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 it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
The reality is we have all in some way been changed over these last 2 years. And I know we may be talking about this in another webinar, but our brains have changed, our bodies have changed, our mentality has changed. So much has changed. Now, some have had radical changes. They are dealing with grief. They may have had death in the family connected to the pandemic, or just a death in the family. Or, things will have happened that get amplified because we've been in this state of uncertainty and stress for 2 years. And so looking to go back to how it was, it's just, I don't think it's going to work. I think you have to accept where the changes are.
Well, there's no relevance in going back. You can't physically, you can never go back. But there is, I think it's important to use that as the starting point of where we've been, and then find a new world that we want to work towards. Because I think we all want certainty, again, with, the sad stories and the sad events that are coming from Ukraine and Russia. we as people working day to day, we're kind of distracted. And I think, as you said, people have changed, but some people don't even realize what's changed for them until they're challenged. And so instead of, if an employer says, right, you know, and I have a story of somebody I worked with who told me that their employer said, right, everyone must be back in 4 days a week and we're going to give you £15 a day for your food. And thinking, aren't we great? People only saw the word must and massively talked with their feet, didn't want to be put upon, wanted to feel part of the decision rather than being told what to do. And so it's very subtle. I think that's the hard part about this journey. This, you know, so just going to do a little bit of housekeeping, JoEllen, because we jump in and into the meat and into the meat of the topic. But what we want to cover is how to avoid the challenges that are going to arise from this decision making as an organization. And the areas we're going to cover is how we reassure our employees when returning. So that's essentially what we've been talking about now, is, you know, really understanding what people are going through when we ask them. We've both got our own experiences of that as leaders of our businesses, not assuming that it's just employees, but managers and leaders. Everyone's feeling that flux. Therefore, how to help people build resilience in this time of transition, getting everyone productive and getting output back up there, you know, and then thinking about, right, testing, isolation. I've got about 10 questions here of the do's and don'ts of the government, you know, questions, you know, do businesses still need to test that? What actually has changed? So I'm pretty sure everyone knows that, but we can go through that as well. We've got a chat box, which is always helpful to say hello in and put your comments and thoughts, and, you know, just the more you talk about what's important to you, or present challenges, or, you know, ask questions, and we can make sure that the next 30 to 40 minutes till about 11:40 is going to give you value, because time is precious and we want to make sure that this session is aligned to what's really going to add value back in your world straight away. Last thing, JoEllen, I'm getting through my housekeeping. We've got a poll that we would really appreciate you putting your thoughts into, and that is to get an understanding of the practicalities of getting people back to the office. What workplace protocols do you think still have a place in the workplace of the future? Testing, isolation, mandating masks, vaccines. You know, what do you feel as employers or people leaders that should be in place to give your people that support and reassurance that coming back to the office is a safe space? So that hopefully will allow us to all interact a bit and get the right focus on today's session. JoEllen, reassuring employees when returning to the office. I mean, that's the starting point of where we said we'd cover. What would you say on this?
Well, I keep taking a look at what is absolutely necessary. Why do people need to be physically in the office? And so having that conversation, first off, perhaps maybe with the senior team, why do we want people back? Is it because that's what we used to have? Is that the old paradigm, 9 to 5, and everyone sits at their desk? I mean, some of the photos you see in the news, it's like just people back in their little cubicles.
Yeah.
Is that what you want?
Yeah.
So that's the first thing, is why would you want people back? And there are real benefits, without question, that there is something around the camaraderie that's built that you don't have necessarily in the same way, be a different way online. There's ideas generation that can often happen casually, walking by someone and saying, oh, I was looking at that the other day. Maybe we should take 5 minutes and talk about it. So there is the off the cuff moments that happen. There is
more
something
tangible, aren't they? So
yes.
That's why they're hard to define.
Yeah. And it is around people perhaps feeling maybe they need to physically change the way the office is run. I mean, we are now currently set up at Impact Factory sort of in a COVID protective way. You know, all the desks they used to face each other, and now they're more like a choo-choo train.
Right.
Just to, you know, we're keeping a lot of protocols in place at the moment, just because I feel more comfortable, and we are a company that people come into. So we're keeping a lot in place. We want a little more evidence before we say, yay, it's over. Yeah. Or what over looks like. But I think that understanding and then explaining that to people, why we think it's important for you to come in, rather than the must. We have had 2 years of must, whether the right must or the wrong must. We've had 2 years of imposed change.
Yeah.
We've also had 2 years of uncertainty. Not only the COVID uncertainty, we've talked about this before, but the messages coming from government have created more uncertainty necessarily than they've created reassurance.
Yeah.
So if you're dealing with 2 years of uncertainty and imposed change, imposing more change is now going to, people will protest. And they will, as you said, walk with their feet. There are now loads of studies looking at people are not returning to work. They're taking a gap year, or they're just saying, I'm taking this time now to reassess.
Yeah. And I think that's why it's really important for employers to understand their own why. For founders of the business to define the why of the organization. I'm really trying to talk to organizations, not just about being good in the world, but being good for the world. Put that down. Talk about not only what you do, but why you do it and how you're going to give back, environmentally, sustainability, really think about the value you're bringing, because you don't know what's going to resonate with your employees now. What resonates with them now may be different. So it's a great time to almost do some housekeeping on those processes. So, if the first bit we're looking at is, how we reassure our people to come back, talk about why we're coming back, talk about what our bigger picture is as a business, talk about what everyone's role is as a collective, but then drill down into the individual. No, one size does not fit all.
Yes, absolutely.
And doing the legal bit, there's some questions here about what if my boss tries to force me in? Well, employers can give lawful and reasonable instructions to their employees, but what we have to establish is what is lawful and what is reasonable. Remember, forcing people to come in can be discriminatory. It can start to create equality and diversity issues. I mean, it's a bit of a minefield in the sense that if you haven't got your business case, which also then leads to the case for the people, they should align. We're all on this journey towards success and happiness together. Then there will be lawsuits. People will talk with their feet. And, don't ever, I would say, underestimate the value of putting it down in writing to look back. And if they're not sure, sometimes people flick back through emails or in intranet communications, or put it up, put it on, make it the company mantra, put it in screensavers, just really bring that to the forefront. I don't know. What do you think, Joan?
Well, I think that once you know the sort of the legal aspect, you then look at the human aspect. It may be that some of the things that people need reassuring about aren't that big. I mean, I before we went on air, I was telling you about a friend who was very reluctant to go back to the office. She does not live far from her office. It's not like she has a long commute, doesn't have to get on a train. It's a 15-minute drive. She probably could walk it if she could drag herself out of bed in time. But her big thing is, she said, I don't want to go back wearing formal clothes. And I said, well, have you had a conversation yet? She said, well, no, I haven't, because we always used to wear formal clothes. And I said, well, have a conversation about work pajamas, as I'm calling it.
And I told you that I can be smart, but everything I'm wearing is stretchy.
Yes,
smart,
exactly. But, companies used to celebrate the fact that they had dress down Friday. We'll have dress down every day. If that is going to make people feel a little bit more comfortable, a little less restrained. I mean, it sounds like a joke, but things like that have really been important to people, to just throw on their new pajamas and be able to work effectively. And I think that there will be small things like that. So let's say that I remember early on in the pandemic, we were looking at the benefits at one of my tasters, and someone said, well, I get to do this. This is when schools were open. I get to do the school run. So look at flexible hours. If your organization hasn't had flexible hours, let's take a look at how that would enhance somebody.
Yeah, I can speak from the front line. Obviously, part of the talent consultancy world, and what we've always done for 30 years is the recruitment side. Yes, we talk about retention and everything we're talking about today, but in the quest for talent and the war on talent, although I don't really like using that word anymore because there's real stuff going on out there. But the challenge to bring the right people into organizations, it's all around hybrid working. People will forego salary for flexibility because quality of life, the commodity of the quality of life has just shot up because people have lived a real life, real time experiment that it can be done. So again, people look at their employers and say, but why? We've been doing fine. So either employers have the responsibility to demonstrate the why, and therefore employees say, okay, yeah, I get that. Or if it doesn't need to be in every day, then be brave, move forward, try things, and agree together that we'll reflect on those things and keep what works, let go of what doesn't, and keep moving forward. I think, it's businesses that are stuck. It's organizations that, as you said, JoEllen, because we did it the way we did it, they are the ones that are going to get left behind. You will just not retain talent or attract it.
And I think that one of the things that absolutely underscores that is around change. I mean, obviously, we've almost 2 years of unrelenting change.
Yeah.
However, I think sometimes it's your level of awareness of what has happened with you, in you, around you. And if you can raise your awareness about how you have changed and reflect on that as a senior manager, as a manager, and say, well, if that's happened to me, it must be happening with my people.
Yeah.
And therefore, why don't, first off, someone gave me the great analogy. Put your own oxygen mask on first before you start taking care of anyone else.
Make sure you're okay. And remember, I don't know if we were talking about this off air or on air, but we were earlier speaking about the fact that some people may not even realize what's changed in them until they're challenged to go back to the office or put on smart workwear or get on a I mean, for some people, I went through the Blackwall Tunnel the other day. I felt a bit, I'm not claustrophobic, but I was in the tunnel and there was standstill traffic and I noted that I was underwater, something I would never have noticed before. And so just the lack of sort of habit of doing something means we're looking at these things differently. So as you said, make sure you've done your own self-work and then, make sure you walk through that with your employees. And it doesn't have to be in depth. It's where are you today? Should we try that? And some people will need to move slowly. Doesn't mean they don't want to. Everyone will move at their own pace.
Yes, and it is up to us, business owners or senior managers or any manager level is noticing the changes. You will notice it. One of the things that I notice about myself is that I'm slower. I forget things. I mean, I really forget things. And I had a steel trap up there. And I write things down. I have when the pandemic first started, there were huge, long to-do lists. And now I'm back doing to-do lists because I used to retain everything. I can't now. Yeah. Absolutely cannot. So it's acknowledging rather than that's a bad thing. It's how do I take care of the things that I could do before and I can't do now.
Yeah. And you actually mentioned that there is proof that there has been a physiological change in people's brains during the pandemic, which would explain why people have changed. But what was it you mentioned? Something about...
Well, there's something about the neural pathways have been impaired because of the constant stress. The brain...
Uncertainty.
Limbic part of the brain has changed radically in a lot of people. And because it's tiny changes, as you said, it's not necessarily ones you notice. It's that old cliche, hate to say this, about boiling a frog. You throw a frog into hot water and it goes, oh, I know I'm boiled.
Yeah.
But put a frog into cold water and slowly heat it up. It's like, oh, I think I'm toast now or boiled. But it's so slow that we haven't, as you say, until we're challenged or until we're asked to do something new. It isn't necessarily even challenging. I haven't driven on the motorway for 2 years, and I drove to Cambridge to get the train. And it was like, I'm on the motorway. It wasn't muscular memory anymore. It was, okay, I'm on the motorway. There are big lorries. I have to be extra careful. Whereas before it was like I'm driving to Cambridge and I park the car and I know what to do.
Yeah. And so like my tunnel experience, like your motorway experience, people will have their own experience from literally getting out of bed, rushing themselves out the door, changing rhythm. So I think it really is now, the new normal, which is going to be abnormal, but every organization finding their rhythm is going to be starting with leadership and setting out the why, checking in with every manager to make sure they're okay, and then facilitating their managers to check in with their people. And slowly, if you do that with authenticity and consistency, you will find a balance that hopefully, if things stay quiet, will become the norm. But JoEllen, with all of this change and people returning to the office space more, not necessarily full time, but even in a hybrid space, we do need to be able to enable our people to replenish the resilience pot. I mean, you have a great analogy for resilience. Can you just remind us of that? Your visual about the pot and
well,
the boiling.
I think for me, I mean, I remember we did this when I was training as a therapist. Is that we have stress pots, and so there's a pot full of stuff, our life, and there's a flame under it, and you have to determine, is the flame too high, because then the pot boils over, or if you put too much in the pot. And I think that there is something around, we're very quick to chastise ourselves if we're not doing things the way we think we ought to. Yeah. And we're seeing it even on a very practical, pragmatic level with our training, that we can't, as trainers, cram as much in to a day's workshop or a half a day's workshop as we used to, because it may be hybrid, or it may be that people aren't as attentive, and so we have to not slow the processes down, but not cram so many in, because before it was very much, there's so much in here, you'll be able to take one or two things away. Well, now it may be you might take one thing, So we're altering also the expectation that we have of ourselves. Both at a senior level and at any level really within the business, is what's going to be the most productive, rather than I have to replicate the productivity I had before. We are still running businesses where, it isn't a playground. It isn't, we do have to be responsible, and we want our people to be responsible, but we can change the parameters of what that looks like.
Yeah. And the whole premise of the whole last 2 years of I think we're coming up to our second year birthday, actually, of the webinars has been that, the success of an organization is made or broken on their people. And so if we are not attracting and retaining the best talent who are aligned with the journey and culturally aligned, you mentioned that there's someone that someone's joined your world and it feels like they've been there forever. And I said, that's culture. That's when they're adding value, even before they know the role, that you trust them to have the same objectives for the organization.
Just a plug for you. This our lovely Taylor came through the main group, and it is that it's why we do chemistry interviews. Is this going to be a good fit? And it was an instant. And so she's part of the collaborative process, which is what's exciting. And I think that it's getting away from the old hierarchy, again, the old paradigms of how hierarchy works. Of course, there's a hierarchy, the buck stops with me and my business partner. But when there's that sense of collaboration, that everyone's ideas are of value, people feel more invested in the organization. That helps build their resilience, because, they took that idea of mine. It was just, I overcame my shyness and presented it.
Or I'm valued, I have a voice. All of a sudden, the things that might over boil the pot stay simmering because of the trust and confidence in the people around you. And I have to say, one of the practical things I've seen in promoting resilience is actually thinking about the way your office space is set up and creating more, not breakout areas. That feels a bit sort of, office breakout space. But actually thinking about what people got from being at home was the time to reflect and the time to think, which actually has made them more productive. We all know that, the majority of businesses have seen an increase in productivity. However, they've also seen an increase in mental health challenges. So how do we get that balance? So I think looking at your office space and then thinking, why is the office space important? What can we give for people to have that interactive space? But also if they need to go off and have a bit of me time, is there somewhere they can go and have a moment to decompress from one thing and then refocus on another? So really think about your office space and ask your people, what would you like? What would you like to see? Some things, don't even cost a lot of money. It could be that when everyone's in, they want to eat lunch together. You know, I was on client site and everyone down tools for 30 minutes. And it was like, and everyone ate together in their little teams. And it was like, how nice. And if you can actually affect a benefit of going in, it might be that, you know, it might be just little things like people think, you know, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. Yes.
You know, so try different things. And the resilience will come again from noting where people are, where their pot is, their stress pot. Are they overflowing? And so much of the kind of the untangling of things can add to improved resilience. So reprioritization, reassurance, clarity, all things that sometimes when people are stuck at home, they don't bounce off as quick. And I know that for me, I'm thinking about what needs to be done. If I'm in the office, I'll literally shout over to one of my managers and say, what were we thinking with that? But when it's stuck in my head, it kind of adds weight.
Yes.
The stress pot grows. So again, it's just really having that benefit, like what being in the office looks like, why we want people back in. And I think it's really important for anyone who's doing a hybrid role to think about what you can achieve at the office versus what you can achieve from home, and actually planning that time. And hopefully that will give you things to look forward to by being in the office. And all of a sudden the train journey, the tunnel, the motorway won't feel quite so different. Plus will become habitual again.
Yes, I think also I couldn't agree with you more. If you are going to the office to do something you could do at home and you are not seeing any benefit, that is where resentment comes. The other thing that I know I've said this on these webinars before, but acknowledgement is a huge deal. And I think that often we think it goes this way, manager downwards. What about employee upwards?
Yeah.
So that there is a sense of everyone noticing the things that have been done, acknowledging the day-to-day. And I know I've said this before, that people will say, well, if they do above and beyond, it's like, no, above and beyond you expect to be acknowledged for. But the day-to-day, something small that someone did, oh, thanks for sorting that out. Oh, that was great. I really enjoyed the way you handled that. It's not like being overly sugary. It's just the fact that you've noticed and you're taking the time to acknowledge it. That builds resilience.
Yeah. And it actually leads into the productivity and output area as well. Because if we facilitate our people to be able to manage the resilience part and keep it bubbling well below the surface level, they'll have the headspace to be able to be more productive.
Yes. Yeah.
And so they were productive at home. Eventually, hopefully, through this work, you'll retain your people and they'll be productive again. But this state of flux is really the one you want to get through quickly. But there is going to need to be a period of time of adjustment, isn't there, JoEllen?
Yes, so you've been going through it, because really until Freedom Day, everyone knows my thoughts. We still were working with uncertainty. There is now continued uncertainty, but that's almost an individual uncertainty. But before it was like mixed messages. So if we're looking at any kind of rhythm or routine, it is now we're making those decisions for ourselves. So I think that consistency will help people. So it doesn't, again, it's the new abnormal. It doesn't have to be the same.
Sorry, the new abnormal and consistency. Is consistency predictability? I just wanted to clarify.
To me, consistency does mean that, I know that I'm going to get I'm going to get regular feedback. I'm going to be, have a chat here, have a chat there. It's just that whatever you put in place, it's just that I'm not talking about routine. I'm talking about the consistent way you manage people.
Yes.
Really, really will help people feel more grounded, more part of a team, and be willing to be more collaborative, want to stay. You said it right early on. When you identify the why are we doing this? What is my company about?
Yeah.
And people can find pretty much something in every kind of organization. You can find something to attach to that means something to you. You don't have to have it all. You don't have to accept everything, but there should be, for you to stay in a job, there should be enough for you to feel aligned with and positive about. If there isn't, you're in the wrong job.
Indeed. And a personal sense of fulfillment. And everyone's personal sense of fulfillment will come from different things. And I suppose for a manager, it's being able to help identify what that is for that person. And then note that too. Hey, how's that going? Where are you with that? Or I noticed you did that. Well done. And I think that's what's hard. I think pre-pandemic, we were much more a world of, with organizations did create policies where one size fitted all or was created to fit all. Never did, but people accepted that. Now people will not accept that.
Yes.
And for employers, it takes more work, it takes more headspace, it takes more time, it takes more thinking and planning to treat each person as an individual. But my God, if you compare that time to the time of going out and rehiring, it's worth every minute and every penny you put into it. Retain, work really hard on your retention strategies. And that's what we love, finding organizations, new people. And what we love even more is when it's through growth or promotion or new, new areas, rather than we lost someone and we didn't want to lose them. We need to replace them. Of course, we'll do that. But the retention piece is equally important. And with the skills shortage is just increasing, JoEllen. I mean, and the salary levels are really going up like crazy. So for organizations to get that balance, people will forego salary for flexibility. So really listen to your people and what's important, and be brave. I think it's really important for organizations to be brave right now.
I used to, when I ran workshops on sort of life workshops on your life and career, they were 10-week long courses. And early on, I used to say, by the end of this 10-week period, you will have this mantra in your head: lower your standards and raise your stakes. Because sometimes we're so busy on it's got to be right that we don't take bold risks. And as someone who just keeps taking risks and has taken risks most of my life, some have paid off, most have paid off, some haven't. But if I look at the proportion of being bold, being courageous, and taking risks and doing things differently, it generally pays off.
I love that.
I know that there are people who are cautious, but there is something about being the bold one. People will follow that if they feel like you touch.
You only have to look at Elon Musk, and whatever we think of him personally, he is bold, he is brave, he is trying new things. And look at the following, look at the interest, look at his business value. It's not necessarily saying I agree with what he's doing. I think we should fix our planet first. But politics aside or whatever, you're so right. Fortune favors the brave, as they say. Yeah. And I think for business leaders and people leaders, I also think your employees know that this is a time of flux, and that, it would be remiss to say we've got a blueprint for success. Actually, let's work on this blueprint on success, the journey of this together. Yeah. And I think just saying to people that we're on a journey and we're going to work this out together, and I want it to be the best for you and the best for the business. We're not going to lose sight of the business objectives, because that's what gives everybody a role, security, income, and everything that comes with that. But also we're going to make sure that you know how important it is for us that your experience of it is also a positive one. Yeah,
absolutely.
You know what, JoEllen? The time just flies. It's 11:35. We've got a few more minutes. I was just going to direct everyone's attention back to the poll. So currently, testing is at 71% on the question, which workplace protocols you still feel will be important to keep in place. Isolation then follows with 28. And actually, if you keep those two, you don't need any of the rest. Yeah. And therefore, mask and vaccine are both at 0. But if you haven't given us your thoughts yet, please do. It really helps us to understand what's going on out there. And the last area really was around the practicalities of testing and self-isolation, and how employers navigate between the fact that there's no rules from government now, but they do have to still have a semblance of health and safety. I guess it's become a health and safety.
Well, it's very interesting. We run courses, and they're some fully face-to-face, some remote, and some hybrid. So we are requiring anyone who's coming into the office require, we can't know, but we say, take a lateral flow test the night before. And someone who had his train booked and everything came positive. He still did the course online, although by the second day, it was a 2-day course. By the second day, he was really ill. So it was like, take care of yourself. But if we hadn't done that, if we hadn't required that, he maybe would have come in. There would have been people on his train, people in our room, people going back on the train. So it was no big deal. Of course, now with testing, maybe you're having to buy your tests. That's another issue. But it still was swab. And he discovered that he was ill. I mean, he had COVID. Didn't take a big deal. It's not a big deal. Well, for me, it's not a big deal.
And it's just that kind of, we've just built an extra layer of safety into our world. That's it. And for us as employers, we also have testing that we require for people. We have, before we met all of our candidates face to face right at the start. Now we meet Zoom and then we meet face to face before they go and meet with our clients. But still, it's really important that we understand everyone's individual requirement of what they want for that person to have done before they come in. So don't be afraid to say, look, these are our safety structures that we've kept in place. And, we would require you to do the same.
You wouldn't question these days. No one would question a fire drill.
Yeah.
Now, we don't have to have them every day, but we have regular fire drills for a very good reason. It's health and safety. It's understanding where your exit is, your group leader, where you're supposed to congregate outside. Taking a test is just another form of health and safety requirement. And we may change it at some point, but if we resist kind of the things that will make people feel secure and happier, that's to our detriment. Yeah.
And so very simple, easy to set up. As you said, the cost is an issue. Some employers may decide they want to invest in that rather than have a whole team out. Again, the cost to benefit exercise of that might be that you provide your own test. And again, most people are only coming in 2 or 3 days, so it won't be a daily occurrence for your responsibilities as an organization. So interestingly, the final results on the poll are testing at 75%, isolation at 25%. And I think that's probably because, most people will isolate anyway. It all starts with testing. And once we know where we stand, then isolation is a natural flow of that. Therefore, there will always be some hybrid working. And if you get plan 1 down on paper and then reflect on it with your people, everyone will understand the pros and cons, wins, challenges, and why you're evolving the new normal, abnormal.
I just want to add one thing to that, chatterbox here. Change happens evolutionary. We get it imposed and it's immediate, or it evolves, as the term you just used. If we think of these things as evolutionary, we are more resilient, and we can, the next time something happens, we will be more resilient and able to cope with it because we're working in a ever-changing environment. It doesn't have to be big changes, but keeping an environment. We used to say early on at Impact Factory, and we haven't had to say it in the last 2 years, but if it looks the way it did 6 months ago, you're doing something wrong. Something needs to change. It's either changing the chairs or upgrading this or doing something different or making sure that everything fits in a different way so that you are looking to change something, not just for change's sake, but just because it will lift the organization, lift yourself. If you keep doing it the way you did it, you're not necessarily open to change and you are less flexible.
And that essentially is, I think, a great message to end on. Be flexible, be open, work together, and you will get there. And the more transparent and collaborative the communication will build the trust, and there'll be less headaches, and everyone will want to be on that journey with you. JoEllen, thank you so much, and thank you, everyone, for joining today. It's a great pleasure. The poll results are now available for everyone to see. And it's been a quiet chat room, but hopefully that means everyone is sort of enthralled and taking lots from it. As always, JoEllen and I are available outside of this session. We've done a very broad overview, but we are dealing with each of these areas and the whole return to work solutions in a much more focused way with individual organizations. So if you want to pick up the phone, drop a WhatsApp, link in, please do, and we can help you with your specific challenge. But this is what we love to do, is to help the world be a better place through great organizations, great people, great communication. So thank you, everyone. JoEllen, same time next month. It's been great to see you. Thank you so much.
See you in April.
Bye. See you then.
Bye-bye.
Bye for now. Bye.